you're here with Just Maria D. It is indeed Maria D, and I am back with another When and Where I Am Wednesday. And this hashtag linky joinery thing is with Jess over at From Me to You. The idea of this is that we share with you where we are up to right now in a book that we are reading. Now, I believe that Jess does a lot of novels at the moment. That's not where my focus is. And so I'm sharing with you where I am with my non-fiction books, which are generally, mostly quite self-helpy. I am audio booking as per, thank you Audible, not sponsored, not an ad, but happy if it was. The Art of Empathy with Karla McLaren. Now, Karla McLaren is an empathy researcher. She has a very, very interesting story. Where we are in book at the moment is in chapter 2. So in chapter 2, Karla is talking about emotions and the danger that we fall into about emotions being good or bad. She has loads of videos on her YouTube channel if you want to go and listen to some of those. She talks at length about different emotions teach us about our life and what we want from life. So she is of the belief that there isn't such a thing as a good or a bad emotion, that they are just all there and they are all there to teach us something about life. She says that this false belief that emotions are good or bad often leads us to two types of behavior when it comes to feeling our intense emotions, either repression or expression of an intense emotion. An example of this might be, you might be at a funeral. You are in the middle of the service and you all of a sudden remember something funny about the person whose funeral it is. Now, if you were to burst out laughing at that point, that would be a socially unacceptable thing to do. Repressing that happiness, that memory, that great time, at that particular moment is the right thing. And then you then deal with that later on, perhaps at the wake. You can have a chat with somebody else who might have been part of the memory, and then you can have a good laugh at the memory, and that would be the right time to express that. But she talks about how often when we feel what are termed negative emotions, that we often default to one of those two paths. Anger is the emotion that she's been dealing with in the chapter that I'm reading at the moment. Her thoughts on anger is that anger is the thing that we need in our lives to actually teach us what our boundaries are. Quite often when we feel anger, we take one of two options. We either express it, and often, if you're like me and not terribly emotionally intelligent all the time, then we never quite know how to express it. So sometimes we can express intense anger in an explosive way, and that's not the right thing to do. Or the other thing that happens is that we then repress our anger, but repressing the anger means that we don't express it, but it doesn't actually make it go away. If you're anything like me and somebody has said something to me that has made me feel angry and I haven't done anything about that, then it makes me seethe that I think about that. Sometimes I think about it every time I see that person again, because I've not actually ever dealt with whatever it is that has made me feel angry about that situation. There has been a boundary crossed somewhere for me, but I've repressed it, but that hasn't made it go away. What she actually talks about then is all of our emotions require that we complete an action. So in order to get closure on any one situation, any emotion that we feel, there is usually an action that goes along with that to complete the circle with that emotion, to learn from it, to grow from it, to change from it. And what she actually asks us to do is to channel our emotion. So rather than repress it, rather than express it in a way that is going to bring further hurt and shame into a situation, that we learn to channel the emotion. I had a situation the other week where I was at a social function, found myself in the middle of a discussion. I got us there, but I didn't really want to be there, if that makes sense, because as soon as I opened my mouth and said it, I knew that it was going to be the wrong thing and it was going to lead me down a rabbit hole that I was going to find it difficult to get out of. The response to that was the person who I was talking to said something to me as a response to something that I said that I felt was unfair. They didn't have the full knowledge of the situation. They passed a very quick judgment on something that actually had more to do with how they feel about something than what was happening for me in that situation. I then expressed, because I'm trying to work through channeling my emotions, and I'm trying to not just repress things but find ways of speaking my truth in a situation. I then expressed how I felt about what they said, and unfortunately in doing so I caused further damage. What Karla says that I should have done in that situation was channeled my anger. So rather than repressing it, just quietly seething about the fact that I felt so disempowered, and rather than expressing it in the way that I did, which I believe caused further damage to the situation, I should have channeled it. And how I could have more effectively channeled it was I could have recognized the boundary that that person had crossed for me, and that was that they were saying something that was untrue, and they were saying something that didn't have the full knowledge of the situation, and because of that they were making an unfair, inaccurate judgment. I think that there were some issues there that were their issues that they were projecting onto my situation, if that makes sense. So what I should have done was recognized, I channeled my emotion. How I should have expressed myself was, you know what, I don't think that you have all the information here, and I'm really silly to have brought this up now, and I think we just need to leave it there, because I was speaking my truth. I didn't need to be hurtful. I didn't need to respond in anger. I didn't need to give any kind of response other than, I don't think I agree with you, and I actually really don't think we should talk about that now. I don't even know that that is the right response in terms of the things that Karla is talking about, but I think it's probably the best one that I could have come up with then. I could have found maybe a lighter way of saying that, but I didn't. And so the situation went downhill because I expressed my intense anger at the situation rather than repressing it, which was a good thing as well, because then I would have just seethed, when really what I should have done was channeled my anger into something that would reflect the boundary crossing that I felt that had happened, because I would have felt very much like I'd regained my composure. I would have felt that my boundaries were back in place, because it was obvious I didn't want to talk about that anymore with that person at that point in time. I think I would have left with a lot more self-respect and less damage done in that situation. So anyway, that's what Karla is talking about in chapter 2. I don't think I've done it justice really, but I think that that is what I've stepped away with from it at this point in time. It is a knowledge-filled chapter. I think every chapter in her book is about an hour long in terms of listening, and I really should be listening to it with a pen and paper in hand, because I am learning so much about myself and how I react to things, and what I need to take away from situations, and how to learn to walk in better empathy, both with myself and with others. So yeah, when and where am I Wednesday? Hosted by Jess from me to you. I've been Maria D, you've been awesome, and I'll catch you on the flip side. Bye.